Yeah, my name's Joe D, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 30th of 2021. So I just celebrated 2 years on Sunday. And yeah, I have a sponsor. I sponsor other men. My home group is here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I don't do too many of these Zoom meetings, but this is pretty sweet. And just seeing how this is operating, I like this. I might have to do this more. It's funny because for some reason I'm more nervous sharing now, on my computer in a Zoom meeting than I am in person when there's plenty of people around. But yeah, let me get into it. What it was like, what had happened, and what it's like now. I want to start by saying, if you're into this meeting, if you're new to this meeting, if you're a newcomer, and you feel like you're not sure if you're an alcoholic or if you have substance abuse problem, if you don't think that it's gotten too bad yet, if you feel like you're beyond the point of return, if you're like somewhere in the middle and you're just like in a gray area, I've been there. I felt like that before. I've compared myself to everybody in these rooms. I've gone back out. I've done more research and development, and let me tell you something, it never got better. And if you're in these rooms right now, I think you're a miracle. And it took me a while to realize how special it was to find these rooms. But with that opener, I'll just explain a little bit about my upbringing, my life. I was born in France. I was born in France to a single mom. I guess my dad was like, not really in the picture, not really like a wholesome dude. So that was just the case. And my mom and we fled to the States when I was like a year old. So I don't speak any French, unfortunately. I don't know too much of the language, but I was born in France. We moved to New York City when I was like a year old. So I grew up the first like half of my life, like my childhood was growing up in New York City. I was like raised on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, First Avenue, if any of you guys are familiar with that neighborhood. And yeah, I came from like a pretty like affluent family. I wouldn't say it was like we were hard for money or anything like that, but my mom was a single mom. And she too, she drinks and uses drugs like I did. So I'm not going to diagnose her as an alcoholic or a drug addict, but just by observation, that's the type of person she was. And so my mom wasn't really, she wasn't the type of mom to like bring me to sports events or bring me around other kids. Most of my childhood was spent with like my grandma or my cousins or my uncles. Sometimes I'd be with a babysitter, or like with my godparents. So I was like, the whole saying, it takes a village to raise a kid. That's kind of true, like about my life. Like I had lots of outside influences outside of my family, growing up. But going into like school, I went to 6 different schools. I got kicked out of a couple of schools. I moved a couple of times, went to different like high schools and stuff. So I always had like different friend groups. I never felt like I really like fit in anywhere. But when I was like about 12 years old, that was the first time I ever had a drink. And that moment sticks out in my memory pretty detailed. I stole a bottle of wine from my grandma and I drank the whole thing in one night. I was like 12 years old. I probably weighed like 100 pounds, drank a whole bottle of wine. And somehow I made it through the night. I'm pretty sure I blacked out, but all I remember was waking up the next day and it was a school day, excuse me. And I was not fit to go to school, to say the least. I was, very violently ill in the bathroom. I had to lie to my mom and to my grandma and say, I have like a stomach virus. I can't go into school today. And I thought it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I felt like for that night, from what I remember of that night, I felt like I could breathe. I felt like all the trauma from my childhood, all the stuff that had ever happened to me, it was just like a release of all of that stuff. Like I felt like my whole childhood, I was like holding in a breath. Like, you know, I had a pit in my stomach. Like I had an anxiety growing up that had just been alleviated with like 3 sips of alcohol. Like it changed everything. Like I remember that night very specifically. And I'm pretty sure, you know, that same week I started experimenting with like dried goods, you know, with some flour substances and stuff like that. And you know, my life took an immediate trajectory. Immediate. And that's what I chased every day after that moment. Pretty much until I came into these rooms this time, until you know, I got sober. But yeah, my high school career was basically centered around partying. It was centered around drinking and drugging. You know, it wasn't until like after high school, it wasn't really until I got sober that I realized like my entire identity in high school, my entire like my personality was molded and created around drinking and drugging. Like that was my identity. Like I didn't have like any separate like personality. Like I was the guy, the go-to. I was like the stoner. I was the kid who could have people over and party all night on a school night. I was the kid who was allowed to like smoke weed in the house. And that was my identity. Like that's why people hung out with me. That's why I wanted to hang out with people. Like if you had some drugs or if you had some alcohol, you know, I wanted to hang out with you. If you knew I was, you know, going to host, then you wanted to hang out with me. And that's just kind of how it went on. And I was very popular for a little while in school, you know, just because of that. But I realized, you know, getting sober, like not many of those people stuck around. Not many of those people are still my close friends today, you know, as close as we were back then. You know, they were, and a lot of those people weren't, you know, around at some of my darkest moments in my life. They were just kind of, you know, it was just, we used each other to get what we wanted, really. And when I turned 18, well, I'll back up a little bit. When I was like 15, I'd gotten in trouble on the beach. You know, I grew up so when I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up some more. When I was like 13, I moved to Florida with my mom. Immediately got into like, you know, the same shit, you know, drinking and smoking and all the kids in high school that were doing the same thing. And when I was 15, I got in trouble. I got arrested on the beach for minor possession of alcohol. I remember it was like 4th of July or Memorial Day or one of those days. And, you know, I was just obliterated and I got arrested for it. And so I got in trouble. I had to do community service. It wasn't a big deal, whatever. Got trespassed from the beach. And then when I was 18, I had like my first major consequences from drinking and drugging. I got arrested a couple of times for some alcohol and drug related stuff. And I got put on a program, like a drug court program. And this was the first time I can remember that I actually like stayed sober for any amount of time. You know, I think I had like 6 months of like loose sobriety. I don't think it was, you know, I'm sure wherever I could sneak a drink, I would. Wherever I could sneak this, I would. Like whatever I could get away with, I tried to get away with it. But I was like relatively, you know, like clean off of substances for the 6 months. And I remember as soon as I got off probation, you know, it didn't matter the consequences, it didn't matter that I went to jail, none of that stuff. You know, I went straight back to it, partying and drinking and you know, using drugs and stuff like that. And then some time went on. I'm going to try to speed up the drunk-a-log for you guys, because, you know, we all know how to drink and drug and like what happens, but you know, I'll speed it up a little bit. You know, my mom got really sick when I was about 20, 21 years old. She was diagnosed with cancer. She was prescribed like a bunch of, you know, medications and stuff like that. You know, I started abusing those medications. I started drinking really heavily to try and suppress like what was happening with my mom. I quit this job. I quit school. I quit all the stuff that I was doing. And I went to go take care of my mom, and my drinking got really bad, my using got really, really bad. Everything got really, really bad. And I quickly started to spiral out of control. And then in 2018, I checked myself into a drug rehab for the first time in New Mexico. I was like living in my car completely. Life was completely unmanageable. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't do anything. I was living out in my car for like months. Just like I smelled terrible, and I was just like, I give up. I gotta try this. And that was the first place I was introduced to AA. And I really liked AA. I really liked what it had to offer. I really enjoyed going to the meetings while I was there. But it didn't stick. And I didn't understand why. I thought like, oh, like now that I'm sober, I just have to keep, I just have to keep white knuckling. I just have to stay sober, and like I can do this on my own. I know everything about addiction and alcoholism. Like I'm equipped with all the knowledge about it. I can do this. I got it. And very shortly after that, I had relapsed. And after that, I probably went to four, maybe five detoxes. I can't even remember, but I went to a lot of different detoxes. I went to two other treatment centers, and I just kept relapsing. I just like could not stay sober. And my life got like more and more chaotic, more crazy, more graphic and dark. And right before I got sober in 2021, the last 3 months before I got sober, it's like complete blackout. I really don't remember much of it. I just remember the really gruesome and like just like dark graphic parts about it. But I got arrested, like basically I got arrested 3 times. I went to jail 3 times in 2021. And on April 6th of 2021, I was living out of my car with my dog, and I got out of my car and I was in like a delirium state from all the stuff I was doing and drinking and stuff. And I woke up early that morning thinking I was going to take my dog for a walk, and I got in the car and I didn't make it like a mile or two of the street. I tried to do a U-turn on a major highway, and as soon as I tried to take the turn, I T-boned another car, causing it to flip. And there was a family in the car, and they got really hurt. And even to this day, like I feel it's a really hard thing for me to swallow or say out loud. Especially with the images in my head of that whole ordeal. I didn't kill them, but they're still alive, but they were badly injured. I remember immediately going to jail and going to the hospital and then going to jail. And I just remember the feeling of just like I will do whatever it takes, just like there's nothing, like I give up, like whatever I have to do, I will do it. Like I can't do this anymore. And I posted bail, got out. My mom actually let me stay at her house that night and said that I could detox at her house, and she knew what I was going through. And so I went over there, which was probably the worst idea ever. And for the next 3 weeks, I tried to detox myself, which I do not recommend if you're as bad as I was. But I managed it. I did it. And there's a part in the big book that explains this perfectly, but my alcoholic mind won't remember how bad things have gotten or how bad I've felt or how bad, my life has progressed in unmanageability, no matter if it's like a day after or a week after or a month after the thing that had just happened. And 3 weeks later, I was feeling pretty good. I thought, I got over the situation. Everything was okay. I took my mom's car out again. I stole it, and I was gone for 3 days. There was a warrant out for me because she had a Marshman Act with me, all kinds of stuff. I took the car, and April uh April 29th, 2021, I got pulled over, and I got a second DUI and a bunch of other charges, and that was my sobriety date. And April 30th, I woke up, and I was sitting in jail, and I was like looking at like some pretty serious time and pretty serious charges. I had like a pretty intense bail set. It was like thousands, tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and I was detoxing, and I just felt like screaming. I felt like pulling out my hair and crying. I remembered how I felt 3 weeks ago when I had crashed my car and almost killed those people. And I said, how did I let this happen again? Why am I like this? Why am I alive? And, at that point, my alcoholism had progressed so bad that I didn't care if I died. Like, I had no fear of death, no fear of dying. I didn't care if I died at all. Like, death did not scare me. I had overdosed so many times. I had, almost killed myself, or like, drinking and driving or doing whatever, to the point where, it just didn't scare me anymore. But the way I felt in that jail cell that day, not knowing how I had gotten there and not knowing if I was going to get out for, another year or 5 or whatever. It was far beyond that. I didn't want that to be my legacy. I didn't want my mom to have to bury me, or have a memorial for me, and then like somebody asked her, how was Joe before he died? Like, I had destroyed my life to such a bad degree over the last couple of years of my drinking that I truly couldn't live. I couldn't die leaving that as my legacy. It just hurt to think about. And I think I said my first ever prayer that day. I was raised very agnostic, I mean, I wouldn't even say agnostic. I was pretty much raised atheist my whole life. And so praying never meant much to me. It never, did anything. But I do remember praying to the universe and just like saying, please, like, I'll stay sober. I don't care if I go to prison. I don't care what I have to do. Like, I'll stay sober. I can't live like this anymore. I'll do whatever it takes. And I woke up the next day after that, and I felt, even though I was detoxing and stuff, I felt calm and I felt safe. I was actually happy to be in jail. I felt like I was safe, like other people were safe from me. And, I was just ready to do whatever it took. Fast forward a little bit, I got out of jail a month later. I had a court date set for, a few months ahead of that. And my mom gave me one last chance. She said, here, I'll help you pay for another treatment center. If you could, if you can do this, this is your last chance, because I'm breaking off all contact with you. And I agreed. I said, I will do whatever it takes. You have my word. And I don't blame you for, cutting me off and losing contact. I don't want you to get hurt anymore either. And I got to treatment center and I was really ready. I had just spent a few weeks in jail. I detoxed, so I was like ready and fresh minded to do whatever it took. And I went there completely like wiped of everything I knew. Like, I knew at this point, like when I had walked in that treatment center, I knew I didn't trust myself anymore. I knew I didn't trust my own thinking. I knew every time I drank, I hurt somebody, or I hurt myself, or, something bad happened every single time I picked up a drink. Like, it wasn't a question. Like, every single time I picked up a drink or a drug, I was either hurting myself or hurting somebody else, slowly or, very rapidly every single time. And I didn't trust myself at all. And I'm looking back on, the 90 days I spent in treatment. I'm so fortunate and so grateful that I just took every suggestion that was given to me. And looking back, it was like so against my nature to take the suggestions, it just felt so foreign to me. And I just did. I took all the suggestions. I got a sponsor. I went to every AA meeting that they offered. It was 6 a week. I went to every single AA meeting, even if I didn't feel like going. Um, I started working some steps. I did some like thorough, trauma work on myself for like outside issues, stuff that they offered there that gave me a whole new, outlook on everything. And one of the things that one of the counselors in that rehab that stood out to me, she said, Joe, you know more than I do about the clinician side of addiction and alcoholism, but the reason you keep ending up in treatment centers and and the situations that you're ending up in is because you don't know anything about yourself. And that one really hit me hard because it was true. Like I knew, I could work my way around anybody that was talking about addiction, but I didn't really know what made myself act the way that I did. And luckily I found that sponsor. um and when I got out of treatment, I went to a halfway house, like a sober living house, where I ended up spending the next like year and a half. um and I dove into it, man. I dove into the step work. I dove into AA. I got a home group immediately. I was fellowshipping with people every night. I was working the steps. I was on autopilot. Like I just soaked it in like a sponge. I got like the humble pie job. I took a bus to work every day. I lost my license, so I had to take a bus every day. But it was just like one of those things. I just had to do what was told of me to do, and I took all the suggestions I could. I tried not to get into a relationship too early. I tried to work the steps to the best of my abilities, and I took the suggestions like prayer and meditation, stuff that was just so foreign to me growing up, being like a delinquent kid. Um, and I just did it. And some of the things took a long time to kind of like work in my life, and you know, like what my higher power and my prayer and my meditation and all these things look a lot different today than they did when I first got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's grown so much, like exponentially. Like this stuff changes the more you work it. And at least it did for me. And yeah, I remember doing a 4-step with my sponsor, and it was like life changing. It was just to kind of like put the light on in the basement and like to clear it out, and to talk to another human about all the things in my life, what had happened, what the things I had done, the things that had happened to me, my resentments, you know, the just everything, like the sex inventory, everything. It was just like, I had heard, because I had been to so many meetings, that it was like a scary thing, and I didn't find it scary at all. I found it like really, really healing and cleansing to do that with the sponsor, and to see all the defects of characters, and to see like all the ways that I acted out of self-centered fear, and just like, I didn't know how selfish I was until I did that, and it really just shined a light on the way I operated. And then yeah, and then like the thing I talked to my like newcomers about too is like when they asked about the steps, and like they asked like what was the time like you had your major spiritual experience. And for me, like the first major spiritual experience I had was working the 9 step. And I remember going through this list of amends. I had like a list of amends I would never do, a list of amends I might do, and it was crazy. Like I started with the list of the amends I might do, and slowly as that list got shorter, the bigger amends didn't seem as big anymore, and I felt more confident. But I was so scared to do them for some reason. Like I had so much fear to like not apologize, but to talk to these people and just like admit my faults and try to make them right. And but I'll tell you, the feeling I had when my amends were done was like the most freeing feeling I've ever had in my whole life. And it was just like that sip of alcohol I had had when I was like 12 or 13 years old, where it felt like that pit in my stomach and my anxieties had all been lifted away. That is the same feeling I had when I got through my ninth step and when I finished the rest of my steps. It was like there was nothing behind me that I could look back at and feel bad about. And it was just like a life-changing experience to like realize that I had just gone through that phase and gone through the ninth step. Um, and then yeah, I do a lot of service work in AA. I'm part of ECPAW host committee, which is the Eastern Area Convention of Young People in AA, which is being hosted in St. Petersburg, Florida, June 1st through the 4th. I highly recommend you check it out. If you need any information about that, you can ask me about it in the chat. It should be about like 1,500 people we're expecting showing up for this convention. And so the last 2 years since I got sober, pretty much, like between bidding and hosting this convention, I've been involved with a bunch of service work at the convention level, which has been pretty interesting. I'm the Unity chair for ECPAW host, which is a super fun service position because I get to choose all the Unity meetings and all the fellowship for everybody for the year. So I get to host cool beach events and pool parties and escape rooms and you name it, like skate nights, all kinds of fun stuff. And I get to host those type of things. I jumped into service work even before I finished my steps. I remember my sponsor had me chair a meeting at like 3 months sober. I had a 3-month commitment to chair a Sunday night 12 and 12 meeting, which really helped me understand the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I highly, highly recommend getting a service position if you don't have one. And yeah, that was a major turning point. And then also, before I leave, before I got sober, I think the feeling I had the most was like that the world was out to get me and that there was always like a conspiracy theory. Like there's always like it just felt like the world was out to get Joe. And I think it's really through the unity that I find in Alcoholics Anonymous and like the friendliness that I find in the people and in the meetings and in the fellowship and the service work. Like my best friends are in Alcoholics Anonymous. The things I look forward to the most in my my day-to-day schedule has to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's through working these spiritual principles and just trying to be a better person. It's pretty simple, just trying to be a better person and spreading love and trying to reach my hand out and help another alcoholic who's still suffering. I'm pretty happy today and I feel pretty good about myself, and I can look in the mirror and tell myself that I love you. And now today my favorite conspiracy theory is that everything's going to be okay. And it's an unrecognizable person, the person I was 2 years ago. I was barely human. People in Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to be human again. They taught me how to brush my teeth and wash my ass, and they taught me how to stay sober, and I'm really thankful for that. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you, guys.